It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. It's the Jill on Money Show. We are so glad you are joining us this weekend. This is the program that attempts to take the mystery out of your finances. I'm Jill Schlesinger, the CBS News business analyst and a certified financial planner. Mark Talercio is running the show as he always does. He is the executive producer. If you have a financial question, you can send us an email. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com, askjill@jillonmoney.com. If you are on our website, all you need to do is click the contact button. That website's address, very easy, jillonmoney.com. Yeah. All right. So let's get right into your questions. Okay. We want to hear from you, and it's always good to get those questions. So let's get into it. This is from Karen, who says, I currently have $134,000 in my employer 401k. The majority of it, $117,000, is traditional. The rest, the balance, is in a Roth. So both options are available within my 401k. Should I leave it as is, or should I move the $117,000 into the Roth option? Should I do it incrementally so I don't get hit with a huge tax bill? Our household income is $120,000 gross. All right, so you're in the $120,000 tax bracket, 22%. It would be great if you could, convert it, but, and you didn't say how old you are, but maybe you don't have to convert it. Maybe what you should just do is put 100% of your money in the Roth going forward and leave it as is. I don't know. I need a lot more details before we make the decision on this. Do you have the money outside? How old are you? What does your career trajectory look like? Maybe if you don't want to soak up all the money that is already outside of retirement, maybe the best thing in terms of paying taxes, maybe the best thing to do is just say, hey, I'm going to start putting more money or all of my money into Roth. But follow up with us. I'd like to know a little bit more about what's going on with you before we kind of make the absolute yes-no decision. Okay? All right. John says, I love the show. I'd like to know if starting a 529 for myself would be a good idea if I were planning to go to graduate school in 1 to 2 years. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, my wife, we're going to talk about 529 plans in the second hour. My wife and I are 33 years old. Our current income as a couple, $300,000. We have a baby on the way. There's $300,000 in retirement savings, $50,000 in emergency reserve fund, student loans, down from $250,000, now $40,000 will be paid off as soon as the 0% interest is gone. Well, I mean, I don't know how much, I don't know what your capability is in terms of putting money into a 529. It's not the worst thing. I don't know how long graduate school lasts to have some money that will grow tax-free, even if it were just in an account that is, a fixed account. But it may not be worth it just timing wise. And I really want to make sure that from your cash flow, it's more important to me that you pay down those student loans rather than putting money into the 529 plan. I would do that more readily. Okay. Hey, here's another one. This is like the 529 school loan question. Here is a question from Kevin. My daughter is entering graduate school over this summer. A lot of graduate schools out there. She has an investment account primarily made up of a mutual fund and a high quality stock. As of today, she has enough in her investment account to cover tuition and cover the capital gains for the program. Question, is she better off selling out now, keeping the funds in a money market and paying capital gains next April, or let it ride and sell out as she needs the funds? If I know that it's all buckled up and set and ready to rock and roll, tell you what, I would cash out now and just be safe. No reason to really roll the dice on this. You know that there's probably going to be some gains that you don't participate in. So what? You got the money you need. I think it makes sense. I really like the idea. I think that's great. So, yes, I would definitely do that. Okay, here is a message from Tommy who says, I love your show and I like that you're always keeping your cool when things go crazy out there. Here's my situation. My wife and I are in our 30s and we are thinking about buying a home in Southern California. We max out our retirement accounts. We've got enough saved for a 30% down payment. Wow. However, we are a bit conservative with our money and don't want to stretch ourselves too thin. And we're just shocked by the current house prices, which are just going ballistic. Currently, the housing market is crazy. Houses go for more than 10% over asking with 10 plus offers. Oh my gosh. And less than a week after the houses go on the market, they waive all kinds of contingencies. Whew, it's a rough market indeed. We feel like this is absolutely crazy. We don't want to participate in this bidding war, and it seems wise to wait a bit on the sidelines until the market cools off a bit. On the other hand, with this house price inflation and general inflation fears, we are afraid that waiting longer will make our savings worthless. And together with possibly rising interest rates, would make houses effectively more expensive for us in the future. Any advice would really be valuable. Where should we park the money if we don't want to participate in the housing craziness? I was thinking about tips or exchange traded funds, some inflation protection. He cites a mutual fund or an ETF. Thanks so much. Okay. Well, look, the housing market really is insane right now, especially in your particular market. I think that what would be good for you to know is that when I think about a lot of these housing data folks and the numbers that have come out, what we really do know is that housing prices are on the rise, but the situation should ease up some. Okay. We last week had a Case-Shiller National House Price Index report said that prices are up 13.2% year over year. That was in March. So it's a little bit of a lagging report. But, they actually noted that San Diego had a 19.1% increase in prices from a year ago. So here, I think, is the suggestion. Keep looking. Don't stretch and go too crazy. But if the numbers can work and you do have to get into a bidding war, as long as the numbers work for you, then fine. Don't go beyond your max. And if it's just making you crazy, you could hang out. You could wait 3 to 6 months. The situation should ease up with inventory coming online. But I would not necessarily just exit the market and say I'm out. I would keep looking. I'd keep trying. I know it's frustrating, but therein lies the discipline and the patience aspect of this. I hope that helps. Okay, you're listening to Jill on Money, and if you have a financial, an investment, a housing question, give us a holler. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. And our website is jillonmoney.com. There you can get lots of resources, good stuff there. Mark keeps the website up to date and does a great job doing it. Hey, while you're on the website, why don't you sign up for our free weekly newsletter? Another Mark Tillers production. Okay, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And if you've got questions that are percolating in your brain about your money, your life, your career, anything like that, give us a holler. Ask Jill@jillonmoney.com. And if you are willing to come on the program with us, let us know, because when you come on the program with us, it is way better. So that's what Emma did. Emma is on the line from San Diego. Welcome, Emma.
Hi, Jill and Mark. Thanks in advance for answering my question. I'm really honored to be here with you. All right. So my husband and I, we make $230,000 a year. I am 36 and he's 41. We have one toddler. He's 3 years old, and we have only one debt, which is our mortgage. It's 520,000 at 15-year, 2.125%.
2.125%, and it's a 15-year. What's the property worth?
It should be 750 to 800 right now.
Great. Fantastic. Okay. 3-year-old. Great. You've got the house. Great. Are you just making the regular payments or are you paying extra on this outstanding loan?
We actually refinanced from 25 years. So 15-year regular payment is really comfortable for us right
Great.
now.
Perfect. Okay, great. And you said you made $230,000 a year together, right?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I got that right. Okay. Keep going. I'm listening.
We have a retirement account at 250,000 combined. We have an emergency fund, 60,000.
Great.
I believe that's all I have. So my question for you is, every month we expect to have a savings of between 4 to 5,000, and we wanted to know what should we do with that money. Our goal is maximum earnings potential for this money, and we don't know what to do. Should we just put it in a robo advisor, hire a wealth, advisor? What do you think?
Well, let me ask a couple of questions, Emma. Are you both maxing out your retirement accounts? Are you putting $19,500 a year each into your accounts?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. And for the 3-year-old, is funding education a priority for you guys over the long term?
We started it, but when we talked to a financial advisor, they said there are workaround because if we put lots of money on 529 down the road, he might be limited on financial aid.
You're not getting financial aid anyway. Don't worry about it. I actually disagree with that. And I'll tell you why. You make too much money. You're not getting financial aid. It's not happening. I mean, if your child can get into a great school and get some sort of scholarship or, a merit scholarship, that's one thing. But 230, I mean, if you have 4 kids in college at the exact same time and you made 230, maybe. There's no way with $230,000 a year you're going to be getting financial aid. Do you have a 529 plan already established?
We do, but we were, not really maximizing it every year because of that thought.
So first and foremost, I would say, let's use that 529 plan. Okay. Now, for the other money, if you just decide to do that, I think that what makes sense to me is probably just to do, as you presume, a robo advisor. It could be Betterment, it could be Vanguard, it could be Schwab, it could be Wealthfront, it could be any of them, and get the money in and start building that non-retirement base up. I think that if you don't seek other financial advice, in other words, if you said, all we're talking about is just investing, that is going to be the cheapest thing for you to do. It really is. It's going to be a teeny amount of money. If you wanted to do it yourselves, you could do it also. You could just open up a mutual fund, index fund account at T. Rowe Price or TD Ameritrade or Vanguard or Schwab or Fidelity. You could do that yourselves. But even if you just wanted to make it really easy and pay a tiny bit more in terms of a fee, you could use one of the robos. If you think you want full-blown financial advice, then that would lead you to looking for an advisor. I mean, it sounds kind of like you're buttoned up. I mean, it doesn't sound like you necessarily need an advisor who's going to charge you 1% for just managing money. But are there other aspects of this that I'm missing?
No, that's it. We did talk to one financial advisor and we were on the fence because what you said, it seems like pretty manageable at this point. We were thinking maybe if it got to more than a certain amount, we can start hiring a financial advisor to manage our wealth. But I think for now, since we only have, less than 1 million really to manage, we can look at that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the services are really easy and some of them will give you advice once you get above a certain amount. Like I think with Betterment, I think it's about 100 grand, and with Vanguard, it's 50 grand, and maybe with Schwab, it's 25 grand. But you can get some advice along the way using a robo. So that's something worth checking out. I think you make it really simple. I really do believe that if you're in a place where you just know you're adding money every single month and it's just simple, just make it easy, automate it, have it come right out of your account, you're done. The only thing you have to just do is try to do the 529 stuff concurrently. But again, the 529 plan, don't forget, we are talking about a tax-free way of investing. And there's nothing better than that. Honest to God, not only about your income that, I think your income takes you out of financial aid territory, but, what's better than putting money into an account, having it grow without any taxes, taking the money out when you need it, and not having to pay any tax too. It's like a Roth for education. And I think that's an incredibly efficient way for you to start thinking about funding education for your 3-year-old. I have 2 more questions for you, though. You ready? Life insurance?
Yes, that's my second question.
Talk to me. What do you got?
Yeah, so my husband and I, we both have a policy, 850 each, 15 years, because we kind of like outlived the first 5 years. So my question to you, should we up it or keep it as is? I know they say it should be at least 10 times of your annual salary. So what is your recommendation?
It doesn't have to be 10 times because you're saving so much money that essentially every single year your life insurance needs are going down. Are you going to have another kid?
Yes, if we're blessed to have one, yes.
It may be that you should look into life insurance, especially while you're still under the age of 40 and, he's 41. It's not terrible, but I would look at maybe going back into the life insurance universe, getting a 20-year term policy, right? I would look at it, and there are tons of insurance calculators, but my guess is that you're probably going to both need to kind of up that coverage, at least for the first, 10 years or so, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get you covered while you are concurrently saving. So essentially, if you had a baby, let's say a year from now, right, you would probably need more like $1.5 million of coverage. This is my guess. You'd have to run some numbers, but I'm guessing it's about $1.5 million in coverage. And then you would need that, but then 10 years later, you wouldn't even need that much. It's just insurance is the kind of product where it's so cheap, it's easier to just get that policy. So maybe it's easier for you right now to get a $750,000 20-year policy. Go to policygenius.com, go run some numbers and make sure that you have enough and pretend that you had another child right now. Just pretend. Because it might be worth it for you to just get this coverage today, especially if you are trying to get pregnant, because once you get pregnant, you're not going to get the coverage. You got to wait till after the baby's born. Okay. Do you guys have wills?
Yes, we do. We just did our estate planning and will.
Is there anything else that's on your hit list of questions for me?
No, you answered everything. And I'm
Great.
so grateful to you and Mark. I really appreciate your show. Very helpful, straight to the point. Love it.
Okay, if you want to come on the air, it's very easy. You send an email or you click the contact button when you're on the Jill on Money website and let us know whether or not you're willing to come on the air. And if you are, then you can just get your question answered in real time, not without waiting any of that. So if you want to skip the line, let us know, come on the air. Okay, we'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are delighted that you are with us. This is the program that is trying to take the mystery out of your financial life. It may not be that mysterious, but just in case it is. We got a lot of things to think about here. We got a lot of changes that are potentially coming down the pike for the tax laws. I don't know how much of this is really going to get passed. I don't know. I have my doubts now. Just know that, that everything you read about in terms of taxes going up and rates and changes and step up in cost basis, We don't know anything yet, so try not to do anything too crazy right now. Don't try to really guess what the next steps are going to be. I just think in general, the safest assumption would be to essentially say, I believe in general that tax rates are likely to rise in the future. That's what I would say. Maybe not if you make less than 75 or 100 grand, but for those who are in the higher brackets, I think they're going up. We here at the Jill on Money program, we are sponsored by Facet Wealth. We're going to talk about Facet Wealth a little bit in the second hour with our guest. Facet Wealth is a flat fee, conflict free planning company. And what do? They make financial planning accessible to everyone. They've got a bunch of CFPs all over the country, and certified financial planners or CFPs are fiduciaries. They've got to put your best interest first. And the thing that's cool about when you work with someone who is really more of a financial planner than someone who is an investment manager, the financial planner is going to look at your life from your viewpoint based on your goals. And then they're going to recommend the best strategy for you to achieve those goals. And that's kind of what Facet Wealth does. They don't have wealth or account minimums. Facet meets you where you are. So if you've got a question about it, or you've got a concern, or you want to get a second set of eyes on your financial advisor, investment manager, whoever you're working with, why don't you hop on over to facetwealth.com. Facetwealth.com. Okay. Now, let's get back to your questions because you got bunches of them, and that's what I want to hear about. Dan is from New Jersey. And he says, I've always enjoyed your segments on TV, and I love your podcast as well. Thank you. Oh, we have a sister broadcast, gang. It's a podcast. It's called Jill on Money, and you can subscribe to it by going to our website or wherever you get podcasts. Okay, let's get back to Dan from Jersey. Dan is 62. His wife is 61. He says, I'm an engineer earning $140,000 per year. My wife is a homemaker. We've lived in our home for many years, but the quality of the neighborhood is declining. We had a drive-by shooting a year and a half ago. Wow. We are also concerned about the amount of maintenance required for a 3-story older home. The home is paid for. It's worth around $200,000, and maybe we would net about $165,000 if we were to sell it. So they have to figure out where they're going next. And Dan says, we've been looking at homes in 55 and over communities in our area, but we don't want to take on a mortgage as retirement approaches. So he says, I plan to retire at age 68. I may have to work till 70 if we were to purchase that new home. Okay. So, wow. So instead of he's selling one home for 200,000, he said the new homes they're looking at 300 to 365 with pretty high real estate taxes and homeowners association fees. And he says, we do risk being priced out of this market if things get even more juiced up. So a lot of questions about this. Here's the asset situation. He's got some Vanguard accounts, a brokerage account, 2 Roths, for him and his wife, and a traditional IRA and a 401k. So here's the breakdown. In his brokerage account, $266,000. 2 Roth accounts, about $550,000. Traditional IRA, $300,000. 401k, $100,000. A bunch of savings, so that's good. They've got emergency funds of $100,000. They've got some savings bonds, $15,000, and HSA of $30,000. Total is just shy of $1.5 million. Great. Here's the Social Security. He would get $4,500 a month at age 68, $4,700 a month if he retires at 70. It must be him. He's adding his, and his wife is claiming half of his benefit. He also is entitled to a pension. That's good. May have subsidized Medigap policy from work, $529 for the grandkids. I always took the you need to save for retirement message to heart. We've lived simple, frugal lives. We worked hard on our current home, and over many years, we've made it a nice place to live. Our home is not appreciated as much as homes in nicer areas. I always thought we'd live the rest of our lives here. I was wrong. That's such a bummer. Our daughter thinks we should pull the money from our savings and retirement accounts, and buy the new home with cash, and take our time clearing out 40 years worth of stuff we have in our current home and preparing it for sale. I'm concerned about having 2 homes at the same time. My preference would be to get rid of the stuff, prepare the house over 6 months. if we were to pay cash for the new house, which accounts should we take the funds from? Does it make sense to clear our house out and prepare it over 6 to 12 months and then do a contingency sale using the proceeds from the sale of our current house, or take our daughter's approach? Whew, that's a big question here. Okay. I'm going to just say that I'm going to be somewhat blasphemous right now. First of all, I think you should sell the house. I think you should try to do this all at once. I know it would be great if you could carry them both, but it sounds to me like it may be harder for you to sell your home than buy the new one. So what I think you ought to be thinking about is really doing this concurrently. Second thing is, I don't think you should take any money from your account. I do think you should get a mortgage, and you can pay it off. But for the time being, let's not have to put a gun to your heads about taking all the money and all the liquidity that you have in your brokerage account and using that to buy a house outright. You're going to keep working. You've got, you said you're 62. You're going to work 6 or 8 more years. So you'll have income. You'll be able to deduct that. And I think that it makes a lot more sense for you to actually take a mortgage, even if it's a 15-year mortgage, have that bill, and then, maybe you can pay it down later and accelerate it. But for now, I wouldn't do that. I'm very concerned that the way you describe your home, it is going to be somewhat problematic to sell. So I want you to focus on making sure you get that sold first. I would look at the new place. Even if in the interim you had to rent for a while, I wouldn't even care. But I really think that it's not worth sopping all that liquidity up and not having it. So mortgage, give me a holler back if you need more help. I know this is probably not the answer you wanted. You're listening to Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, it's Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here answering your financial questions. And we are presented by LifeLock. LifeLock, let us help protect your identity. Mark, did I tell you about the weird thing that happened to my mother? This is wild. She calls me up and she goes, the strangest thing just happened to me. My credit card got rejected. And she calls up the credit card company. This is like her Sterling Credit. She calls up the company and they said, oh, that's so weird. We were notified by Social Security that you were deceased. So she said, well, I'm here. And she then makes another call. She calls Social Security. What's amazing to me is that she's getting people on the line, but she calls Social Security and they say, oh yes, we have a note here in your file that you were deceased as of, last month. This is so crazy. So, monitor, I'm going through all her records. Nothing shows up. I then call Social Security and I explain listen, I'm from CBS News. This was happened to my mother. I'm not calling it in an official fashion. I'm just wondering. And, essentially they think it's a data entry error. They haven't told me this, but they think that it doesn't appear to be an identity theft issue, but it does appear to be that there was a problem in the inputting of data. Now, I would think it all gets done electronically. Is there really a human being putting into a keyboard like, Mrs. Schlesinger died, this is the date of death? I just found that so weird. So I'm not completely satisfied, and I'm still super hyper vigilant about watching her accounts now. And, her accounts she's had a credit freeze for so long. So not like anyone's going to do damage, but it's just a weird story. If anyone else has had this situation, let us know. I'm just intrigued. Isn't that crazy? Yes. Mark says, like a media company accidentally running an obit. Did we ever do that, Mark? I hope not. Okay. This is from Matthew, a note who says, I just found your podcast. Oh, great. We want everyone to find it. I appreciate the advice that you give to others. My folks are 93 and 90. They are maximizing their gifting options, sending checks to each child, spouse, grandkid. My question, a very good first world problem to have, is what do we do with our very generous checks that are in the mail? Here's a bit about me. I'm 55 years old and I'm married. My wife is 53. Our 2 kids are launched. The house is paid off. We've got $670,000 in a taxable account with 200 grand as an emergency reserve fund. Wow. 1.6 million in Roth and traditional IRAs. I'm considering spending some of the money on new furniture, maybe a vacation that mom and dad would want us to enjoy, but we will still have a lot of money remaining. Do I continue to diversify in various exchange traded funds and index funds in my taxable account? Should I look at bonds? I don't have any. Should I be dollar cost averaging into something else or other thoughts? And at some point, hopefully this is still years away, I'm likely to get a rather sizable inheritance, which will be distributed, and the same question will arise. Thank you. Well, of course, I want you to think about other asset classes if you're 100% in stocks. That seems to be a pretty easy response to your question, Matthew. But I'm also wondering if when you are looking at your own retirement planning, if you're on track. You don't mention how much money you will need in retirement, and you also didn't mention what the actual gift will be that you're receiving, the check in the mail, and what your future inheritance would be. On some level, it could be, if it's a big number that we're talking about in the future, perhaps then you could stay in a more aggressive outlook for your portfolio, knowing that essentially you're going to have way more money than you need for retirement. However, you know what? The ups and downs of markets, they do tend to get a little bit less interesting as you age. So I think you should take some of this money and buy some new furniture and maybe also a vacation. I don't know how much it is, but I think the question that you're asking starts with a premise, which is, are you on track for your retirement with or without your parents' money? And if the answer is yes, then great. Then you can spend some of it. I'm all about having some. What do I want to say, Mark? I was thinking about enlightened hedonism. What do you think of that as a term? Or conscious, like, people do like unconscious spending, like they're like automatons about their spending. Conscious spending. How can we say this? Like spending and having some fun and not knowing that you're not squandering an opportunity. What's the right term? Oh my God, you are so not fun. So Mark said he wants you to use the surplus of cash to convert all of the traditional retirement into Roth retirement. It depends. So that's the problem. We don't know how much because there's $200,000 in an emergency in cash. And it sounds like you like having that much. But if we could convert, it depends how much money there is. I think you got to spend some. I mean, I don't know why. I think this is going to be a lot more money than he needs for some reason, the way he's writing it. If they're maximizing their gifting options, the question is, are they giving you and your wife, say, right, they get 15 grand each. Are they giving each of you $30,000? So that would be 60 grand. Could you use that to do some fun stuff? How much is it going to be in the future? Marx wants you to convert. I want you to spend some. I don't know. I could really do a little bit of both. I need to know what the total amount you think you're going to inherit is going to be. And then I think we have a better chance of creating a game plan for you that makes more sense. So that's what I'm thinking. All right, you're listening to Jill on Money. When we return, we're going to get back to more of your questions. Don't forget, if you want to not miss a day of Jill, subscribe to our podcast. It's called Jill on Money. You can get it wherever you find podcasts. If you need some help with that, just go to our website, jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are so happy you're with us. We're finishing up our first hour. There's a whole nother hour ahead of us, and we've got a special guest. So I think it'll be fun for you to hang around, and you will be amply rewarded. I promise. Okay, Marlene writes, my husband worked for the federal government, and he retired 17 years ago. So he did not pay into Social Security because he had a government retirement. He passed away in March, and I was told that I might lose my Social Security because I will be entitled to a portion of his retirement, his pension. I know other people who have not lost their Social Security. Do you know what I should do? Mark, am I going to give her the most annoying response? We have a friend of the pod who is a Social Security expert. And often when we get questions like this, he'll write back and say, I think she should call Social Security. And I do think that in this case, I think you should talk to the pension, so that whoever's running the pension, they probably know this information. They know their own pension and what the rules are. And you should also call Social Security. So the problem is with different parts of the federal government, there are different rules about whether or not they've paid in and what the spousal benefit means. So I know it seems unfair whenever we get these questions and people are like, it stinks. It's okay. It may, but the rules are the rules. And so we don't want to dwell on that it's fair or not fair. We want to react to it and make sure that you can adjust and know what your income is going to be, right? It just brings this up. I was asked by a publication for a quote about annuities. And I said, people really do like income. They like consistent income. It's something that can give you peace of mind. And I said, and I am going to be the biggest fan in the world when the vast majority of insurance companies are providing what is essentially the index fund equivalent of annuities, because that will be a great time for all of us. We will be able to have access to streams of income without gobs of fees. So I put that out there because I know many of you would like something like a pension, whether it's eating into your Social Security or not. Okay, stay tuned. We got a great guest next hour. We are going to be talking about education funding. Okay, it's Jill on Money, and we will be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's hour number 2 of Jill on Money, and we are sponsored by Facet Wealth. You're going to hear a lot about Facet Wealth because our guest this hour is CFP Brent Weiss. Brent Weiss is the chief evangelist, and he's a financial planner at Facet Wealth. That is how I came to come upon this company called Facet Wealth. And I don't have every advertiser come on the air with us. It's just that I think this company has got a real neat model, because what they do is they provide financial planning that is accessible to a wide variety of investors and people who are just starting out, who don't actually have investments, just have financial questions. They have flat fee, conflict-free planning. It is all provided from dedicated, certified financial planners, so you get the same person every time. And, I think what's kind of cool, no wealth or account minimums. Hey, Mark, did you hear during the week that Merrill Lynch made this very big proclamation? They're going to not allow their financial advisors to make cold calls anymore. I literally thought to myself, is that still how people are getting business? Yep. In the old school way of doing financial advisory work, I guess you do. I guess you just hit the phones. Unbelievable. Anyway, we are delighted to have guest Brent Weiss come on. We are talking about education. And since this weekend we are celebrating 529 Day, get it? May 29th, 529. And 529 is an education funding vehicle. We thought Brent would be the perfect person to talk about how parents can better help their kids without going broke. So here's the first part of our interview with Brent Weiss. Let's talk a little bit about when people are considering helping their kids out for college.
Mhm.
They often are doing so by shortchanging other goals. So can you talk about your theory on funding lots of different kinds of goals for these, especially the younger families out there?
I've never met somebody who never had to make trade-offs in their financial life. If you think about it, especially those that are planning for an education, we can specifically talk about college today, but planning for an education, They're parents, they're mothers and fathers, they have kids. So they have careers, they have lives, they have kids to raise, education, retirement, maybe buying their dream home. There are all these different kinds of things. A lot of people step in and go, holy cow, how do I actually help my son or daughter get ahead, right? How do I help them avoid having $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of student loan debt? And if you think about the numbers, we can talk about some rough numbers here. Here's what I always recommend to my clients. I say, let's actually take a step back. Before we focus specifically on education, let's actually figure out the top 3 or 5 things that you want to achieve. Let's prioritize them, and let's figure out how we can best allocate, I'll say resources, that's the technical term for the money that you have, in the best way possible. So the number one thing here is you don't have to like be perfect in any number. It's not like you have to hit the specific number to plan for college, but even starting at $25 a month when your kid is less than a year old is a really great place to start. And then over time, you evolve that strategy based upon what's right for you and how your life changes over the years.
But, it's interesting because you say the top 3 to 5 goals. You'd say, what do you want to really do?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've been in this situation. I know I have, where we hear from couples all the time and they'll say, I want to save for my kids' education
Mm-hmm.
and my spouse wants to save for retirement. And which one of us is correct? And so I wonder if you could speak to that idea of balancing longer term goals with education, which often will come first. So what's your view on that?
Well, so there's always, I don't know how many people out there have heard this, but a lot of times when you mention this to a lot of financial planners or other people, they say, well, you can take loans for college, but you can't take loans for retirement. And while that is technically true, that doesn't mean it has to be the right strategy for you. So in that example, when a couple comes in and says, I want to save for retirement, I want to save for college, they say, which one is right? I look at them and go, you both are. But let's actually figure out which one makes more sense. And the bottom line is this: depending on where, like, no matter where you are in your journey in life, your ability or your savings for retirement, you have to kind of sit back and say, are we on track? Will there be additional resources? Are we so far off track on retirement that really needs to be the priority? Or, hey, have we done a good job in the first maybe 10 or 20 years and we can put more towards college? I've seen both ends of the spectrum where some people say it's all about retirement and my son or daughter, not that I don't love them, we're going to figure it out when we get there, which usually isn't a great plan because then you get there and you end up using a lot of your income and that derails some of the other savings. But I've also seen, I just want to make sure that my son or daughter can get through school and I'll figure out retirement later. Now, the interesting thing here is that usually that decision has something to do with their past, their experience when mom and dad went to school, how their parents thought about it. So really, I try to get to the root of the situation, why they're feeling the way they do, and then ultimately how we can balance that. You're never going to have a perfect plan. Very few people do, but you can really sit down and say, hey, maybe we just fund retirement with 80% and 20% goes to college. There's no right or wrong answer. It just comes down to having a conversation about what's going to make sense.
So what I want to ask you is how you develop this kind of chill approach. And the reason I ask is that I feel like I can be a little too rigid around this. Well, because I'm the one who's like, screw the college thing, save for retirement. And it sounds to me like you have come to a different kind of a place. And I know that because of our training through the Certified Financial Planner training, we can be rigid. I know that. So I'm wondering, did you have a different attitude about this, and has this developed, or have you always been a little bit like, hey, you know what, you can do a little of, you can do some of a lot of this, you don't have to do it all or nothing?
In 16 years, what I've realized is you can go get an education in anything. And here we'll talk about financial planning, but really the CFP, Certified Financial Planner designation. And you can learn the technically right way to do things. Like mathematically, here's what it is. Here's the problem. When you talk to human beings, guess what? We're human beings. We don't always like the math or the technical aspect. I tried when I was younger as hard as I could to show people retirement. If there's something left, say for college. And then I realized that everybody has a different past, a different experience, a different belief. And the CFP board actually just added the psychology of financial planning to part of their curriculum because they're starting to realize that the right plan for you actually has to account for you, how you think, feel, act, believe about money. Like, what does money mean to you? If I give 10 people the same exact financial plan, maybe one of them will act on that financial plan. The other 9 will go, that actually doesn't speak to who I am and what I believe in. And all of a sudden I'm giving advice. They're paying me for advice, but they're not doing anything because I'm not giving advice that actually meets them where they are. So what I've learned in 16 years is I can come in and give somebody a number and say, this is what you need for retirement. And there's a tiny bit left for college, so we'll figure that out when we get there. But then somebody comes in, and this is a lesson I learned. One of my clients came in many, many years ago, and he said, I had to pay for every single nickel. I came out of school with a ton of debt, and I struggled for the first 10 years. He goes, I will never let that happen to my son or my daughter. Here's why I believe in saving for college. I have zero chance that I'm going to convince that person that retirement is more important. So we found a way to balance it, where college was number one, but it's still like a 60-40 split, 60% college, 40% retirement. He was still doing something towards retirement. I just learned that in 16 years, that I need to make sure as a planner, I'm not just giving them good advice. I'm giving that advice that works for them. Now, I will say the last thing I'll say here, because I know you give it's sort of like tough love is still love. If someone's doing something that is so detrimental to their life or their money, I'm going to step in and say, I can't recommend that you do that. You can still do it. It's your plan. I can't recommend it. But most of the time, that's not the case. We believe in certain things. We'll do certain things. We understand the trade-offs and we'll take action. Ideal doesn't have to just be numbers. It can be what you actually believe or want to achieve.
We'll get back to our interview with Brent Weiss in just a minute. Lots of different ways to save for college. That's coming up around the break. If you have a question about college financing, want to know the best way to balance your own needs, maybe with your parents' needs, with your kids' needs, let us know. Send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And yes, happy 529 day. Happy education funding month, day, weekend, whatever. Every day for most people who are thinking about their kids' college educations. Now, of course, there's lots of different ways to save for college. And that's what we want to talk about with our guest, Brent Weiss. He is from Facet Wealth. And we want to get into some of the differences that these various accounts provide for you. So many of you might have old accounts that have funny numbers and names and initials. Doesn't matter. You can switch things up. So here is more of our interview with Brent Weiss of Facet Wealth, and we are talking about education funding vehicles. I guess I also want to get into some of the different aspects of the ways that people can save for education.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, the old school way would be you'd open a custodial account. Is there ever a use case for using a custodial account for saving for college?
So they're not a bad thing, first of all. It's not the first account that I think of as a financial planner when I'm helping clients really understand how best to save for college. Because when they reach the age of majority, which can be different in different states, your child, your son or daughter, has full unfettered access to that money. Meaning it is theirs. It is not yours. You have, as soon as you gift that money to your child, regardless of their age, in theory, that money is theirs. It's no longer yours. That's not a bad thing, because sometimes, your son or daughter gets a gift for birthday and you want to put in an account for them and all that kind of jazz. I typically don't recommend the custodial account. It's not where I go. If they're going to do it, I would say, look, put in a checking account or a savings account that you can still control. Be good enough not to spend it, but put it on the side. And then you can ultimately use it for anything down the road, whether it's the first car for your kid or sending them to college. I'm not a big fan. I'm not against them. It's not the first place I go, though.
Okay, so now let's move to the next level of custodial account types, which is an UGMA or an UTMA, which is fun to say. The Uniform Gift to Minors Act, Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. This allows you to basically push money into a minor's hands without establishing a big clunky trust that's usually expensive. You use after-tax dollars to put into these accounts, right? And what is the benefit of an UGMA or an UTMA account?
I actually see them rarely used these days. When I do see them used by parents, when we have a conversation about how they actually work, most parents go, I wasn't aware of that. The good news is you can move money into an UTMA or an UGMA. UGMA is the old school one. UTMA, the uniform transfer, that's like the updated new school with some new laws and everything in there. They're essentially the same. There are some good tax benefits. You can actually give money to your son or daughter, even invest for them while they're very, very young, if you choose that's the case. And then there are actually thresholds where there aren't any taxes paid, because guess what? Your kids don't have any income when they're 7. At least I don't know many kids at 7 that have a bunch of income. So they can be great. They can be great tools. I always caution how much you put in there for most people that I work with. I think that's important. There are some people that use UTMAs and UGMAs for larger amounts and larger sums, to your point, without the complications of trusts. The benefit of the trust is actually you can then you can create controls beyond the age of 18 or 21.
Right.
Until someone's 25, 35, 45, in theory, more mature in life and more mature with money. So I see UTMAs and UGMAs used, I'd say sparingly when they are used. We typically try to figure out how do we actually spend that money down, because they can impact financial aid for your kids when they ultimately go to school. So we look for, how do you end up buying laptops or cars? Rarely used, okay accounts. Again, I'm going to go back to saying not the first place I go when it comes to thinking about planning for kids.
Okay. Now, let's move in honor of 529 Day. Let's talk about why geeks like you and me love the 529 plan as an education savings vehicle. So let's talk about some of the features of the 529.
I believe it is the most powerful tool that we have available to us to save in a tax-favored, tax-advantaged way for an education, because laws just change. It used to be, typically speaking, you had to save or use 529 money for college or graduate degrees. In 2017, with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, they actually said you can now use up to $10,000 for any level of education should you choose to send your son or daughter to private school. So they're tax-favored accounts. What does that mean? There's three layers of tax savings here. All of us get two of them. Some of us get one of them. The first one is a state income tax deduction. You have to check with your state. When you make contributions up to a limit, it's usually like $2,500 or $5,000, you can deduct it against your state income taxes. Not every state allows it, but here are the two powerful things we all get. Number one, any growth in the account is tax deferred. You don't have to pay taxes as it grows. And if you use that money for qualified education expenses, it's income tax free. That is a very powerful combination.
It's a beautiful thing. It's like if you want to see people go nutty at like a CPA or CFP conference, you say tax free, right?
Amen. And with a lot of talk now about how taxes may change, who knows if they will, the fact that you can put money away, it grows tax free. If you use it properly, it's income tax free. That's a great way to help your son or daughter get ahead in life and avoid those pesky student loans that so many have.
What's the downside of a 529 plan as you see it? Like for what kind of person, what do people need to know as speed bumps? What are some of the things that you watch out for?
There are some limitations in terms of how you can use the money tax free. We just talked about it. If you use it for qualified education expenses, you get some really good benefits. If you don't really get some good benefits. Any of the growth on those distribution, when you distribute the money, is fully taxable and subject to a 10% penalty. Not very good. So what I see from a lot of the clients that I have, they have a kid. We talk about a 529 plan, and they're going, how the heck do I know what my 1-year-old is going to do when they're 17, right? Or when they're 6 or 7 and she's dancing around in her princess outfit from Disney. How the heck do we know what they're when they're going to go to school? How much is school going to cost? Is college going to change? There's a lot of that conversation coming out of the pandemic recently. But how important is a college education? There are so many factors in all of this that it's kind of confusing and hard to determine what your kid's going to want to do in 10 or 15 years. So it's really the limitation of if you save a bunch of money in these accounts and you go to pull it out for things other than college, it's not a great account. You're going to get stung a little bit because you're going to have to pay your taxes and your penalties. That's one of the biggest shortcomings when it comes to 529 plans.
And what about the idea that some people are using 529 plans now for high school? Let's say you have a bunch of money saved for education. And, they did change the rules. You can use it for private high school. There's only so much money. Are you better off using the money for your private high school, or should you wait as long as possible and use it for college? What's your guess on that?
If your son or daughter is going to private school, whether you use the 529 plan today or use it for college, it's all going to come out of your pocket at some point. The benefit of maybe using it for high school, if you have bigger expenses, that when you get to college, there might be other ways to actually fund that. Scholarships, grants. I'll sprinkle in student loans, but the whole point is try to avoid some of that. Using 529s, the sooner the better, typically works out to your benefit, because if you're using it, then you can also save a little bit more when it comes to college. Again, you're capped at $10,000 per year in a distribution for private high school. Because that's one of the benefits at college. Yes, it's more expensive typically than a private high school. But there are other ways to fund it, work study programs, other ways to offset the total cost, the net cost of college, not the sort of sticker price you see when you hop on the website.
So one of the things that I'm trying to do with Mark is convince him to have another child. I think you know that. That's sort of been well documented. I am not satisfied with one nephew. I need more. I'm not related to him, if anyone's listening, because sometimes people do not realize that I'm using these terms quite loosely. One of the things that I say to Mark is that like all that money you're saving in that 529 plan, if we have another child, and Theo becomes a huge, amazing, award-winning violinist and gets to go to college for free, we can just shift that money to another kid. Even though there are limitations, you are able within a family to access 529 funds for other kids. And I think even for the parent, if the parent wants to use the money. Is that right?
So you make a great point. One of the ways to get around the limitation of the use of 529 funds for an education is to just give it to someone else in your family, right? So if you're contributing for your son or daughter, you as the parent, mom or dad, still own the account. They're just a beneficiary for some future use. If you decide that your oldest daughter ends up becoming a sports star or, to your point, the violinist, whatever it is, and gets a scholarship, you can change it to your son, you can change it to your daughter. You can waterfall these things for decades.
We'll get back to talking more with Brent Weiss from Facet Wealth in just a second. Hey, during the break, here's a great idea. Go to our website, JillOnMoney.com, and there you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Free, and every week Mark does all the work. He puts all the cool stuff together and sends it out every single Friday. So check it out. Go to JillOnMoney.com, sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? You know what's in my wallet, Mark? My little vaccination card. I did not get it laminated as you advised against, but I put a little cover on it so it didn't get damaged in any way. You have it in your digital wallet. I don't have, unfortunately, I cannot get into this stupid New York State thing. My record is not there. I don't know what's going on. So anyway, let's get back to talking about education planning. And this next part of our interview with Brent Weiss of Facet Wealth, I tell the story of kind of the most egregious kind of bad financial advice that you can get. It happened to me personally with a friend of mine who got the bad advice, and I had to tell him about it. So here's more of our interview with Brent Weiss. I used to find when I was in the business, now it's a million years ago, right, that you would run into these people who have 529 plans that were sold to them, but weren't in their best interest. I'll give you the best example. I put this in my book because it's a true story, and my friend got kind of pissed at me because I put it in the book, but I made an example of him. So a friend of mine is a doctor in New York, and he said, can you just look at this account for me? It's like my guy told me to buy this thing. It's a 529 plan. I presume everything's fine, and I just put a ton of money in there. I look at the plan, and I say, why did you buy this? He goes, but I thought 529 plans are good. I said, I know. You're a New York guy. You live in New York, and someone sold you a Rhode Island 529 plan. And that 529 plan from Rhode Island, number one, stinks. And number two, is more expensive than the plan. And you didn't use the New York plan, so you don't get the New York state benefit that you get from taxes. Is that still happening? Please tell me not, Brent.
Unfortunately, it is.
Oh,
So you bring up a lot of really good points here because number one, and this is actually really important for the audience here. When you look at a 529 plan, first of all 50 states have a state-sponsored 529 plan. On top of that, a lot of states have an advisor option, meaning you can have a financial advisor manage a 529 plan for you. And that's where this conflict of interest comes in, because that case, someone's like, oh, I can make a nice commission on this because those 529 plans can pay a nice commission to a financial advisor. My opinion on this matter is you don't need, I think you can work with a financial planner to help you understand, should I be funding a 529 plan and how much? But in terms of the investments within it, a lot of these 529 plans run through states have college age, like retirement date funds, but they're college date funds. Let's say if your kid is 5 years old, it'll say, here's the portfolio for a 5-year-old. If your kid's going to school in 2030, here's a 2030 fund. You don't need to pay somebody for that ongoing advice within the 529 plan. Yes, understand how it impacts your plan. Yes, understand how much to fund, but really understand if you're doing anything, how much it's going to cost. Is there a better option? And frankly, you mentioned a couple minutes ago, the CFP professional designation. Before you work with any financial advisor, ask them the questions you deserve to know the answers to around this. Are you a fiduciary? Do you have to do what's right and best for me? Because if they do, then they're going to come back and say, the New York plan's best for you. Actually use the direct plan that's less expensive. I'll help you make the right decisions, and then you'll be in a good spot.
Hey, by the way, considering that you are a collegiate athlete, did you have to actually pay for college at all?
Luckily for me, I was an athlete coming out of high school. So I had 5 schools offer me a scholarship. I chose the University of Notre Dame. I got a partial ride there, had to pay for some of it. I came out actually with about the average in student loans that most do, just around $30,000. But it was a reasonable amount. Interest rates were really low back then. I think my interest rates were like 2%.
Wait a minute. So you still had, so you only got, didn't you get a free ride someplace?
No, I got about a 75% ride. And it was an academic scholarship, oddly enough. So I was a student athlete and I played on the baseball team. But there's only 11.7 scholarships for 35 spots on a baseball team. So you have to think so they can't actually give full rides to a lot of people, or you have to be really good. Or you have to be one of the top recruits.
Yeah, of course.
So I got most of it funded. So when I had to make a very hard decision, I had to sit down and go, can I afford to go here? But given the quality of the education, the school, the baseball team, I chose that. And it's been a great decision for me, which is why, student loans aren't necessarily a bad thing. You just have to understand how they're going to affect your life and your financial life when you graduate.
We are hearing from a lot of people. They're making their college decisions, right? It's a weirdo time. And we also know that there are, millions and millions, I think 40 million Americans who are carrying some student loan debt. What's your rule of thumb on the correct amount of debt that one should graduate with in order not to drown in it or to be robbed of every single opportunity of your life? So, we've heard this. Mark Kantrowitz said a long time ago, you should try to borrow no more than what you think your first year's salary will be. So that's a generalized rule. But what's your view on student loan debt?
I'm less concerned about the number, the amount of debt you have. I'm more worried about sort of the payment that you're going to have when you come out of it. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about it, if you go to law school, if you come out as a doctor, you're necessarily going to have higher loans. However, you have higher upside. So I like the tie to the income potential you have, because what you don't want to do is go out there and have $100,000 in student loans. I'm going to exaggerate a bit here for an example. Have $100,000 student loan debt and you're making $30,000 or $40,000 a year when you come out. You're going to be crippled in student loan debt for a long period of time. Think about the amount you're gonna take on. And also, by the way, maybe the more important thing is look at other schools that are more affordable. I see this all the time with clients that I represent. Their son or daughter, right? They know what they can afford. Maybe it's the in-state public school, which are great in many cases, but their son or daughter goes on visits and what do? They pick the $60,000 out-of-state school. That's where you really get into trouble. It's really about finding the right cultural fit, the right environment, what's the right student body, and then making sure you're not taking on too much debt. I can't give you a specific number, but you should be thinking about what is that payment actually going to be when I graduate relative to how much I can earn given the degree. But by the way, if you're a freshman, I promise you this, you might change your degree 4 times, at least when you're going through college. I know I did. Just be careful. Think about the impact after you graduate, not just the amount of money you're taking out.
We'll get back to our interview with Brent Weiss in just a second. Don't buy a 529 plan through a broker when you have an option to go directly to your own state. There, I said it. Just don't do it. All right. When we return, more of your questions. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and it is a long weekend. It is Memorial Day weekend, and I know that many of you have barbecues planned because you've all been vaccinated, and now you can gather together, and that's great. But let us not forget that this is actually a real holiday, that maybe if you have a memory of somebody that you want to honor, someone who served in the military, this would be a good weekend to do that. So let's not forget about that, because that's important too, right? Good. Very glad to do that. All right. Now, this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And as a result, we are begging you to send us your financial questions. Please do that, because only with your questions can we keep this going. And so just shoot me a note, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Don't forget to tell us if you would like to come on the air, because we'd love to have you. And when you come on the air, I get to ask lots of nosy questions and follow-ups, and it's all good, right? It works out so much better. There's something about hearing the voice, and sometimes I can read between the lines in an email, but hearing your voices and really taking the time to walk through some of the advice I'm giving and ask follow-up questions in real time, it can be much more fruitful. Anyway, let's get back to our interview with Brent Weiss. We've gone from education funding, we're heading over to estate planning. We like to end our conversations with you with your 1% pledge. And this is Brent when he first joined the show and, would come on every month and say, just do a little thing. It can add up to a lot, right? Like even you said it today, like even if you put $25 a month into a 529 plan, you get started, you do something. And this is your nod to your own advice, which is if you just do 1% better, you're going to help yourself a whole lot more than that in the long run. So what was last month? Was it estate planning?
You're going to shame me here, Jill. It was, yes, it was estate planning.
Oh, interesting. So let's just go back for a second. So, all right. So you were going to do some simple estate planning because we suspected that maybe you had marriage on your mind. That was what your much older sister Jill was thinking. How'd you do? So do you have the nice binder of or got the electronic file of everything done, right?
Well, so this is where I'm going to show my human side, because I'm still in the process of interviewing multiple estate planning attorneys.
Oh, come on.
Hold on, time out. Let's talk about this for a second, right? So I sat down with an attorney. He recommended the most complicated thing possible. Now, I'm a financial planner. I don't like complexity. I still like simplicity. And then, of course, why did he recommend that complex structure? Because he gets paid by the hour. So the more work that he's going to do, and I'm going,
hold on, I have to interrupt. Is this somebody you've done business with?
No. Well, because I just moved
How do you know? Oh, because you're new to the state.
I moved
that's
from
right.
Yeah. So that's a good point. I moved from Maryland to Florida. So I actually sent an email to my previous estate planning attorney in Maryland and said, hey, can you help me? He said, here are a couple names, give them a call. Now, this is also one of the reasons I started my company, is because I don't believe in more traditional ways of charging people. I want to make sure it's fair, it's transparent, it works for me. So I step in and say, how are you going to charge? Before I say, I run a financial planning firm, I ask them because I want to see what they're going to say. Mm-hmm. I want to see what kind of advice they're going to render. I go, is it good advice, number one? And number two, how are they going to charge me? I met with one who said, I trust this guy. And I was blown away at the sticker price. I'm like, I don't like that. What I wanted to hear is this estate planning attorney sit down and say, hey, look, a couple things I need to know about you so I can start thinking through what could be some good options. But hey, Brent, what do you want to achieve? What are you trying to get out of this? And what I wasn't trying to do is establish some dynasty trust and transfer all of my Facet Wealth shares into it to create a legacy for the kids I don't have yet.
Yep.
But guess what he recommended? Oh, you know what you should do? You should transfer these shares at discounted values. And I'm going, time out. I'm 38 years old. I have a long life ahead of me. I don't have kids yet. Keep it simple. I'll figure that part out later. And of course, the price tag he had was for the whole trust thing. And that turned me off. So I said, while he's probably very good at what he does, he wasn't willing to listen to me to find the right solution. So I'm interviewing other estate planning attorneys to find one that I feel I can work with, not just today, but for many years to come.
I like what you just said, by the way, because I think a lot of people think they have to do everything soup to nuts. The most important thing I've learned around estate planning, again, this is like anything else, which is to just do something, get something down on paper that you can at least revise later. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing. I just took my mom in to update her estate planning documents because it's a long time. My father died in 2013. At that time, we really didn't have to do anything for her docs, but now rules are changing. And also we know a lot more about her life today. Things have some of her financial circumstances. She sold the house, she sold a piece of property, whatever. And so we were able to go in there. It took like no time to update this, and it was so worth it. Besides thinking about things differently, it's very hard to like update estate documents in real time when your spouse of 50 something years has just died. So we weren't going to do it then, but it was a good amount of time, somewhere 5-7 years where you're basically saying, I have an idea of what my life looks like now. And I'm older and I have different ideas about what I want to do. And it was interesting. Her views have changed in the last decade around what she wants. She's very much like, I'm going to give my money away now. I don't want to wait around. And we're going to start having her do qualified charitable distributions so that she can give some money to charity from her retirement account. So it was just a really good reminder to me in my real life that these are documents that are living and breathing. They're not set in stone. So I agree with you. Get something done. Hey, listen, if you can't find anything, go to another one of our great sponsors, Policy Genius. They do online estate docs now. Okay, we'll be right back with our interview with Brent Weiss. We're going to hear about his 1% pledge. He's going to make his life 1% better. So we're going to hear about that when we return. Hop onto our website at jillonmoney.com and check out all the great content that's there. Let us know if you have a question by just hitting the contact button. We'll be right back. Okay, before we finish out the show, we've got to hear from Brent about his 1% pledge for the upcoming month. I know it sounds kind of goofy sometimes, but this works. Goal-oriented planning and tasks, it really does work. So that's why we would like to encourage you to also do something like this. Just make your life a little bit better, just by 1%. That's all it takes. That's it. That's it. All it takes, 1% better. It does add up over time. So here is the conclusion of our interview with Brent Weiss of Facet Wealth.
My 1% pledge this month is actually to start planning for my own vacation because I never do this. I'm finally going to take my birthday off. It's going to be the start of, which is June 25th. It's going to be the start of a 2-week vacation to St. John's. And then when I come back, because we can do this now with remote work, is I'm going to go up the East Coast. On my way up to like New Hampshire-ish. I'm going to give you a buzz, Jill. Stop in New York. We're going to grab a bite.
Claim your lunch.
Mark, you should come too. Let's hang out.
Yeah, I'll pay for both of your lunches. Don't worry. I like the idea of planning your vacation also. That is so good.
Well, the big thing here, the reason I'm planning a couple months in advance is because with the pandemic, I mean, there's rental car shortages, the Airbnb prices, all the prices are going up. So the sooner you can start planning for that now, is probably going to save you $1,000. So that's like 1% for me, right? Like, hey, let's actually plan ahead and save like $1,000 or two.
All right. I like it. Well, thank you so much for listening to the program. And we are so glad that you spend some time with us. If you need more of us, you want more of us, hop onto our website, jillonmoney.com. There you can subscribe to our sister broadcast. It is a podcast called Jill on Money. Our music is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is our executive producer. And we would like you to please do something nice for someone else today. It will make you feel better and it will make that person feel better. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.